Hello, Alex here, and in this video I want to talk about my first roll of Lucky Super 100, a roll of 100 ISO color negative film of unknown storage from a very expired batch, which I shot in the Canon EOS 1V. This roll was provided to me for free by the folks at the Photoshop.ie in exchange for doing some ISO bracketing to get a feel for how it can actually be used for their own marketing purposes. However, they don't know that I'm making this video, they didn't ask me to make this video, and you can buy this film elsewhere, so I'm not going to put any links in the description down below. Just look it up, you can probably get it somewhere. Yeah, I really just wanted to do a video in the My First Roll format because I think it'll be fun. Let's get into it. I'm bending the format a little bit here by talking about the shooting details first because I want to give you some context for what we're really dealing with here. This roll expired in 2006 and the entire batch was unknown storage. Based on the results, I would say it was not stored very well, but we'll get to that in due course. I shot this entire roll through the EOS 1V using the 24 to 70mm f2.8L Mark I that I have because it can focus down to a reproduction ratio of 1:3, which is absolutely fantastic for getting like close-ups of flowers and that kind of thing. Which is important because I shot this roll of film at the National Botanic Gardens in Glasnevin when I wasn't in work recently. That sounds bad. I had time off work. I didn't just not go. I had seen sample images from this particular batch from a few different suppliers rated at either 50 with basically no shadow detail or 25 with what looked to be clipped highlights, but without seeing the actual negatives, I couldn't be sure how to rate the film. One of the folks at the Photoshop actually tested a roll at 50 and thought it was okay, but mainly in extremely high contrast situations. So I said, okay, I'll shoot most of the roll at 50 just because it was a bright sunny day for the most part. And then I'll do a bit of bracketing of a few shots, not all of them, at 50 and 25. So anytime you see two pictures on screen, the one on there, my right, your left, is the ISO 50 shot or EI 50 shot. And the one over here on the right, your right, is EI 25. Additionally, just for fun, I did shoot a couple of shots at box speed just to see how bad it would be. The answer is yes. I had the film developed at a local lab because although I will be doing a C41 development at home very soon, for something like this, I wanted to rule me out as a possible problem. So I had it developed, then scanned it with the EOS 1DX Mark III, and then inverted in Negative Lab Pro. I don't usually mention this, but in this case, I want to say that all of these pictures were white balanced in Negative Lab Pro using either auto neutral or auto warm. There were no actual color corrections done, and if there's any color difference between an EI 50 and EI 25 shot, I will have used whichever white balance setting for both of the shots identically, and then it's just the natural image that changes the tonality of the colors. So that's it for Negative Lab Pro, and then in Lightroom I just added 20 saturation to every shot, set the white and black points, and then for the non-bracketed shots I played with the contrast a little bit to taste because I wasn't doing a one-to-one comparison between X shot and Y shot. So the film itself. Lucky Super 100, known to some as Lucky Color 100, was an ISO 100 color negative film produced by the Lucky Film Corporation in China. I believe it was discontinued in 2016, 2017, around about that period, but in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it was pretty widely available in many parts of the world as a very consumer grade film. It didn't promise much in terms of the, fine grain, faithful color reproduction, that kind of thing. It was actually quite known for erring on the slightly cooler side, with some very intense blues, or shadows could look quite cool even on a nice bright sunny day. So it did have a place, but it wasn't a portrait of its day. It was a Color Plus or a Fuji C200, that kind of thing, just to set the stage if you don't know the film. The film was only available in the 35mm format and was designed for development in the standard C41 chemical process. This yields negatives, which have to be inverted either during scanning or the printing process to yield your final positive images. The film had a nominal ISO rating of 100 when it was fresh. However, I do think this batch was stored particularly poorly, and the effective ISO range is probably in the region of 25 to 12 nowadays. Despite being known for its slightly bluish tint, it is actually strictly daylight balance at 5500 Kelvin. It just has a slightly different color palette to what most of us would expect from a daylight balanced film, which is cool. I mean, slightly having different options is always a good thing, even if they're not available anymore. This is a bit tenuous, but given the context of a wildly expired film that already had slightly strange color palettes when it was fresh, I'm calling this a pro. The color shifts, while extreme, are generally on the more funky pleasing side rather than the oh god my eyes are bleeding side. Whether it's the orange teal kind of look that people make fun of certain Lightroom preset users for, or if it's the more Lomachrome purple kind of look, it's broadly speaking on the more aesthetically pleasing side of a weird, messed up, color balanced film, color shifted film. So as these things go, it could have been a lot worse, and I kind of like the way it looks personally. Saturation is moderate, but not excessive. Like I said, I added 20 saturation to every one of these images in Lightroom, and that's realistically a good thing because it means that you're probably not going to have any one color channel completely clipped, even if you do try and overexpose to balance out shadow detail and just fight through natural degradation of the color dyes in the film emulsion. I do think that's kind of important for something with such wild color shifts because it means that if you do try and correct them, you don't lose information in any given color channel just through the film exposure itself. So you have a bit more room to work with these things and play around. The grain. Even when exposed well, there's still a tremendous amount of grain, and that is to be expected from probably badly stored, very expired consumer grade color negative film, but nevertheless, the grain is pretty rough no matter what you do, and that does limit your effective resolution. Most of my pictures don't have more than just one or two of these weird pink spots, but there are these reddish pink spots on most of the frames on this roll, and it's kind of messed up. It almost looks like fungus damage, but I'm not sure. If you recognize this and know what it is for sure, please let me know in the comments down below. Because if I need to quarantine this film, it would be good to know. At the very least, these marks are easy to clone out in Photoshop, but it would be nicer if they weren't there. I can't guarantee that any particular roll is going to be better or worse if you do buy some from someone. You know, maybe I got a particularly bad roll because I haven't seen much of this in a lot of other sample pictures. It could specifically be the roll I have, but that's the one that I'm talking about, so I have to bring this up. If you do like this kind of film, whether it's double film, the Kono art series, Lomachrome purple, turquoise and red scale, and you want some of this film, the limited availability is definitely going to be a negative factor. It's discontinued. There are only a select number of rolls available left from this batch in whatever retailers happen to be able to sell it at the moment. And yeah, once it's gone, it's probably gone. And if you do get some from another batch, I mean, the film was only discontinued 6-ish years ago. You're probably going to get a better stored, less expired roll, which ironically would be worse for this kind of funky, Lomo, experimental kind of thing, if that's what you're after. Even in the bracketed shots, you could see that the images that are quite flatly lit, they don't look that good. You really need some natural contrast in your scene to be able to push the curves or the contrast quite hard just to bring any life out of it. The fact that the film, like a lot of color negative film, doesn't look good on flat days anyway, but this looks, I would say, bad rather than just okay. So I would recommend shooting it in very high contrast light. Conversely, you would say it's a con that it's not really that suitable in low contrast light, in my opinion. You might disagree with that, which is fine, but by my standards, it doesn't look good unless the light is very, not intense, but high contrast in your scene. And now for the deep dive into my 3 favorite pictures from the roll. This shot here of the tower, I quite like it. It's very orange teal. That was the first thing that stood out to me when I white balanced it, and I did try it a couple of different ways, and nope, this shot is It's orange teal through and through. I like that even though I was at like f5.6 or something, the tower's in focus, it's pretty sharp, but then the bit of hedge that's in front of it framing it, kind of guarding the tower almost, is just that little bit out of focus. It's simple. Again, it wasn't meant to be the most creative shot or artsy shot, but it works out pretty well in this case, I think. This one I do like quite a bit, and I framed it quite wide and just cropped it because I wasn't sure at the time how I was going to finally frame it, whether it would be like a 5:4 vertical, 16:9 landscape, which is what I went for, or even a square crop. It's not just orange teal, this is like blue and purple and orange. Almost like a Lomachrome purple, but with a hell of a lot more orange like injected in there, and a bit of red as well. I think it looks quite nice. There is some like really severe, obviously the color contrasts, but also just the high lighting contrast I think works quite well. And the light filtering through the back of the ring buoy box, it works quite nicely. The fact that the subject is kind of looking out of the frame, so to speak, isn't something I would normally do, but I think it works okay here. And overall, yeah, pretty happy with it. I mean, this is the first picture from this roll that I put up online. It is obviously my favorite. You've got the intense orange and blue kind of look, Hollywood style almost, but with just enough red that it's not duochromatic of just pure orange and blue. And I also like that the leaves behind the flower going that very cyan or tealish blue are surrounded by darkness, more or less. I focused way close with this. Obviously, it's very much filling the frame. This is like a full width of the frame crop, just 5:4. And I shouldn't have framed it as tightly, but if I'd framed this wider as a square crop, it would have been absolutely stunning. But the point is, it looks really nice and the colors are really nice regardless. Apart from the crop problem, there's nothing I would have done differently here. This came out really nicely. It's just if I had more space around it and it wasn't so tight, I would have really, really liked to print this. So who is this film for and would I recommend it? This is another one that's well into the realm of the Lomo experimentalist type who likes unpredictable, wacky results and who wants to see what they can get out of something that's just kind of messed up to be objective about it. Like, it's got horrendous color shifts. It just so happens that they tend to look pretty nice. I wouldn't shoot this as an everyday film, but I have ordered a few more rolls and I do want to play around with them, see what I can get out of it. Try pushing it maybe, use a lot of high power flash, overexpose the hell out of it. We'll see. It'll be fun to play around with, but it's not something you're going to shoot at a wedding. Do I recommend it? For 8-9 euros a roll, maybe one or two. It's not that expensive. It's not like, again, the Kono double film rolls where you're paying, 14, 15, 16 euros a roll for Ultramax or C200. You don't get the consistency with this, but you're paying a lot less. So swings and roundabouts, as they and I say. If you do go and shoot it, I would recommend shooting it at EI 12, maybe 25 on a very bright day where you're able to push that contrast a lot further when everything isn't just mids and you can really just crush the shadows and hide the nasty color casts and the shadowy grain that hide down there. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film. I will be shooting more, as I said. I'm going to play around with it. If you like it, let me know in the comments down below. Stay safe, and bye-bye for now. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Shaka1277, where I post new pictures every day. If you like this video and enjoy what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing or checking out my Patreon, where the tiers start at just €1 per month.